We are at EarthX 2026, and we're going to talk about green building with Susie Vincent of the US Green Building Council and Nick Otte of the Q2 Stadium in Austin, Texas. Now, that is interesting because we are talking about green building, and as an example, we take not just a building, we take a whole stadium. So, where do we start this conversation? How did that happen? That somehow a football stadium, I should say a soccer stadium, a dedicated soccer stadium, became, I believe, only the second soccer stadium in the world that got the total resource use and efficiency certification, which spells like true. So how special is that? Who made that happen?
Yeah, I don't mean to correct you, but we're the first soccer-specific stadium to earn that
Well, that's
certification.
even better.
Something we're very
Always
proud
good to be first.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate that from the inception of Austin FC, from the even the design phase of Q2 Stadium back in 2020, 2021, when we were building the building and opening for the first time, sustainability and all of these things were such a huge part of what we wanted to accomplish as a brand, as a stadium, as a club. And so, everyone involved in designing that stadium was invested in these sort of things, and then sort of fell into my my hands and my team's hands when we opened in 2021. How do we now operate the building in a sustainable fashion? And that's when, a focus on zero waste and meeting Susie and her team a year or so later and really planning that path forward to zero waste became a reality for us. And a lot of work down the road and a lot of work to get to that point with a lot of help from Susie and her team. But it led us to a point now where we are, operating on a zero waste level, and something that we're super proud of, super proud to be the first soccer specific stadium to do so with the True program, and excited to keep going as we, hopefully have longevity in this league and in this business.
Give me an idea of what waste you're dealing with.
So it's roughly 7.5 tons of waste on a typical soccer match. So it's everything that we are serving at the concession stand. So plates, napkins, plasticware. It's cans, bottles, basically anything that people are purchasing while they are inside of our stadium. Is the majority of it. And then really where some of the challenge exists is on the non-event days where we have deliveries coming in, we have third-party events that maybe are bringing in their own things. So really, again, with the True program and everything that it laid out for us, it sort of forces you to consider all of those things from start to finish, not just on a match day, but on a random Tuesday when you think it's just you sitting in the office and there's deliveries coming in. We're managing all of that from the front end to the back end and diverting as much of it as we possibly can.
So I imagine there was a moment that Nick, you called Susie and you said, Susie, listen, I want to have a zero waste stadium. And what did you say?
Yeah, so we at True certify all types of facilities as well as events and construction projects. And it was actually during the pandemic that our first sports facility came to us and wanted to see what it would look like to achieve zero waste. This was not at the time the Austin FC Stadium, but it was really interesting for me as a sports fanatic to learn about how this type of facility has obviously different types of waste, different fan kind of engagements. They're having to deal with, training the people essentially that come in and out of this facility on an ad hoc basis. They're not employees that can, attend a training session and then know what to do with their materials. So it's just been really fascinating to work with that sector. And so I was actually because of the work of a couple of other stadiums, larger stadiums, I was at the Green Sports Alliance conference in 2023, and that was where I first met Nick. And I think we'd maybe exchanged an email before then, and they were, just kind of they're interested. But so that was kind of the first step for them kind of on this journey. I think their diversion rate at that point was like in the 80s. So they were doing really well, but they weren't quite ready to certify, which is 90% or greater diversion is what's required to certify. So was excited to meet him and kind of walk him through some of the roadmap and some of the steps for true certification, which is not just about recycling or composting, right? It's really about working upstream to reduce and reuse as well. So yeah.
But how much can you re- reuse in a soccer stadium? What can you reuse?
Well, it's funny that you would ask. So I think that one of the things I've been most impressed with the Austin FC stadium is very unique to them. Unlike anything I've seen at any of our other sports venues, there is a movement for reusable cups in these entertainment venues, where instead of using a disposable or a compostable cup, they would kind of return those cups. The fans would, and then they would be washed and reused on an ongoing basis. But I actually think that Austin FC is doing something a little bit better than that, and maybe I'll let Nick share a little bit about it. But when you walk right into the stadium, one of the first things you see that's so unique to them is this giant hydration station with one of their sponsor, their premier sponsors' name on it, and it's a reusable water filling station. So in that hot Texas summer, watching the soccer matches, the fans can be hydrated without needing to deal with single-use plastic or single-use aluminum. So
Yeah, it's again, like I said, we're super fortunate that really everyone invested in the club has a passion for these sort of things, and like Susie mentioned, we have these hydration stations in our stadium that are built and designed by Yeti, who is our
So
Jersey
you
partner.
bring your own bottles.
Yep. And so we as a stadium have a relatively unique policy in our industry where we will let fans bring in their own reusable bottle so that they can fill up at those stations. I think a lot of stadiums would prefer that people come in and buy water, so that we can capitalize on the revenue there. But it was a choice both from a fan comfort and a sustainability standpoint for us to allow people to bring those bottles in. And we've got, over the years, we've actually added more of these hydration stations because demand has increased, and people like that policy enough that so many folks are bringing those bottles and using them in our building, and ultimately helping us reduce the amount of waste that we have to collect and dispose of.
And that means that all these concession stands, they whatever they sell is ultimately compostable. Is that's the goal?
Yep.
And these are outside vendors, I guess. So you have to tell them this is what I want.
Yep. It's a combination of some internal purchasing decisions, but also, you're right, outside vendors. And that's like Susie said, with the True program, it really starts from the procurement phase. When we were at that 70-80% level, it was because we weren't focusing on source reduction and getting to that procurement phase to get the right materials in our building. So through that program, through that certification process, we worked with our food and beverage vendor, who worked with all of their subcontractors to build an environmentally preferred purchasing plan that holds everyone in our building to specific requirements. Whether you are a pizza vendor, whether you're a taco vendor, whether you're a chicken vendor in our building, you're serving food in the same compostable boat with the same compostable napkin with the same compostable flatware. And that's, you can't do it without that. That's really what led us to where we're at.
But there's also food waste. What do you do with that?
We're fortunate that our waste hauler, Texas Disposal Systems, operates their own compost facility. So any of the food waste that is left over during a match or disposed of during a match, we have a specific compactor that all of that food waste goes to, and then is eventually hauled to Texas Disposal Systems compost facility to be composted and eventually turned into compostable products or materials and mulch and soil and things like that. And then we also do have a small food donation program where any food that we have left over after a match that is safe for transport and donation, we work with a local food bank to make sure that that gets to a more useful spot.
So do you follow the story in the sense that if something goes to a recycling facility, what happens then? What's made from the waste?
We do, to a certain extent. I've spent some mornings at the material recovery facility and at the compost facility, literally driving behind our dumpsters so that I can be sure they end up in the right place. I signed up for that once, not knowing that that was going to be a 3 a.m. endeavor. But yeah, we've visited that facility several times and seen sort of the whole life cycle of where our disposed products are going, how they're housed when they get there, what they are eventually turned into. It's such a large facility that it's hard to track exactly where our waste is going, but they have such a sophisticated system at Texas Disposal Systems that, you know, it's something that matters to us, right? Like, we don't want to just have it leave the building and assume that it's going somewhere helpful. We really wanted to be sure we were doing right by the story we were telling. And because they have such a sophisticated, consolidated system, we've been able to be confident that it's going to the right spot and ultimately having an end life that we're happy with.
But do you have examples of that end life? What is that?
The compost specifically is a story that we've been able to tell. I'm going to butcher the process exactly, but the TDS, Texas Disposal Systems compost facility, they produce their own mulch and potting soil and things like that from the compost that they collect. So we have, told the story where we haul our compostable material, the food, the compostable products, goes to their facility, turns into a soil, turns into a mulch, and then we've actually had programs where our community impact department will take that specific mulch, take that specific soil, use it in a park reclamation project or use it in a flower bed on site, things like that, so that we can really tell some sort of circular story there that allows us again to be proud of the whole thing. We're not just a percentage, we're not just a waste diversion percentage, we're really trying to tell that whole story from start to finish.
Susie, is this project, is this unique in the sense that it is more challenging than other projects you certify?
Well, yeah, I think I hit a little bit on it earlier, saying like, you have these fans that come in that Austin is a relatively progressive environment. Most people there have probably composted before in their lives, but with most sporting events, like they don't know, this material definitely goes here unless there is great signage and unless there's the leadership that they have at Q2 to really explain the process or to purchase the right things so that there isn't a lot of explaining to do, as well as the accountability and the transparency of what they're doing on the back end. And I think that's where like having the right partners really comes into play. I think their partnership with TDS is really a wonderful example. I wish there were more companies like TDS across the US that were so transparent and so accountable with their processes. But I think that ultimately the process that they took at Q2, which we recommend to so many of our customers, is to start with what we call our pre-certification. It's 9 steps out of our, total, multiple steps that you can take that really prioritize the actions that will set you on the trajectory for achieving zero waste. So he already mentioned like the environmentally preferred purchasing policy is important. You also need to be doing a waste audit, right? You can't measure what you can't manage what you don't measure. So knowing what's in your waste bin, but I think taking it one step farther and not just thinking about what do I see in here that is going to recycling or needs to be taken out because it's contamination. What do I see in my waste stream that could be completely eliminated? And that's really what zero waste is the reduction or the reuse. And so I think they've certainly done those things. And additionally, there's a lot of culture involved with zero waste, right? It's not just a technology that you implement or a great partner that you bring in. It has to be with your leadership and all of your staff as well as the fans. So it's truly like an all-in approach on, who's involved. And so that does make it challenging, but it's also, I think, what makes it such a win in the end, because everyone feels a part of the success. It's not just, as hardworking as Nick is, he, has not done this alone.
Hey,
Yeah.
good point, obviously. But
Yeah.
you mentioned signage, and that made me think. I'm standing regularly in front of these bins, and I'm thinking, I'm having this in my hand. Where does it go? And let's assume for a moment that I am at least of average intelligence, and I think I fail 50% of the time after spending time on it. Then I afterwards think, well, that probably should have gone there, and I did it wrong. So now we're talking about 20,000 people in a stadium.
Yeah.
How many people put the things in the right, trash can?
We are fortunate that it's not a perfect system by any means, but like Susie said, people in Austin are used to this sort of thing. They're at least looking for it when they go to dispose of their
True,
waste.
but sorry to interrupt, but the point here, what I'm making is, yes, the commitment by people exists,
Yeah,
but these systems are far from perfect. I
totally.
mean, they change all the time.
Well, it's
Whatever's-
somewhat a design challenge, right?
Well,
that-
yes, but it's
yeah.
also, you know, what I'm having in my hands, is that compostable or actually is it waste? It's not always straightforward. And so it will be mixed, despite the best efforts. What do you do then? How do
And s-
you then
And that's
meet the certification?
that's really where we have evolved over the years. We started without any sort of back of house sorting operation, and then realized that wasn't going to cut it. So we did start hand sorting our waste on, stationary tables in a small room that wasn't really built for that. But as we went through the certification process, as we really realized where we needed to find, the success and the margins to get to that 90% number, realized that we do need a very sophisticated back of house sorting operation as much as we can and want to rely on people on the front end. So we actually worked with a few different partners, specifically TDS again, to retrofit our waste collection room with a system of conveyor belts and adjusted trash chutes and new dumpsters to really make that sorting process not quite automated, but as efficient as possible. And that's something that without the investment with all of the different partners, without the investment from, the very top of our organization, we would have never been able to get to. But now we've got that process really at a point where you're really limiting the points of failure, right? Like we've asked our fans to sort on the front end, and they've done a good job. We've asked our staff now to sort in a state-of-the-art operation in our waste sorting room. And then there's also a third layer of sorting that happens when all of this waste gets to Texas disposal system. So again, it's all about that full cycle of the journey of the waste, and really trying to make sure that, there's a lot of points for that to go wrong. If we can add the fail-safe, add the fail-safe, add the fail-safe, it's going to put us in a good spot.
So that sorting is done at the facility, at the stadium.
Yep. So
Before it goes, yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. Our staff collects it, throws it down a trash chute. It goes on the conveyor belt, and they sort it all before it goes in the dumpster.
So what's the next step in your environmental policies?
I think that's always the challenge, right? We put all this effort in to get this certification that we're super proud of. Our diversion percentage keeps, increasing year over year. I think really we just want to keep evolving the awareness in our building, keep evolving, how we're communicating to fans. We've tried to build equity in a sustainability brand and a sustainability platform, so much so that brand is actually going to be on the jersey that our team wears this weekend. And that's really what it is. We want to spread that awareness beyond just our stadium even. We want to spread it through our community initiatives. We want to have people leave our stadium and take what they've seen or take what they've learned and spread it throughout the city of Austin, because we want to be a part of the community in that way. So a lot to figure out as to what exactly that means and how we're going to do it. But now that we've got to this point that we're proud of our zero waste and our other operations, we're trying to broaden that even beyond the walls of our stadium.
Thank you, Susie.
Yes, thank you.